Hi everybody. So we've covered tools, we've covered wedging, and now we're going to cover centering. So we're getting on the wheel right now. Centering is a really important process that requires you to center the clay so that when it's on the wheel, it's not going to be wobbling around and you're actually going to be able to make something. So centering is really important. Some of you are going to get it right away, and some of you are going to spend all day trying to center your clay. But eventually you will all get it if you remember some of the things I'm about to tell you. So in the last video we talked about wedging and the importance of wedging. Well, what's happening here is it's kind of the last stage of wedging. So if there's any little air pockets or anything that are still in the clay after wedging it 100 times, this is a good way to find out. And as well, what it's doing is it's aligning all the particles. It's sort of preparing that clay for you to be able to throw it into a cylinder, and it'll hold together a lot better. It's sort of making that clay body a lot more homogeneous. Because even as they sit here in a ball, that outside, depending on how long it's sitting here, the outside consistency of the clay ball is going to be changing from the inside. So by doing this, you're kind of realigning all those particles, making that clay more homogeneous and ready to work from. So I brought it up into a cylinder, and then I'm going to be holding my left arm here. My right hand is going to be coming down, and I'm pressing down on the clay, all the while keeping this hand from having it turn into sort of mushroom or flatten out. So I'm pressing both hands simultaneously until you get this nice sort of orb that's happening here. So this is what you're going to want for the cylinder. Now, roughly speaking, the cylinder that I'm going to throw, the diameter of the bottom will be about what this is right now. So if I wanted a very tall, thin cylinder, this hump would probably be taller and narrower. So the first thing about centering is you want to make sure that you're sitting at the wheel in a comfortable way. If you're sitting hunched over the wheel and you're going to be spending all day there, you're going to find that that you're going to be getting some very sore back, and which could lead to some repetitive stress injury, which we really want to try to avoid. Now, whenever you're working in sort of a physical capacity, like a potter or a ceramic artist, or lots of artists who are continually making things and repeating motions, you really want to, I would never compare myself to an elite athlete, but in a sense, you actually have to treat your body in a similar way. You actually have to stay fit, and you have to try to think about your body and the geometry of your body while you're doing the task to avoid injury. Pottery in particular is really prone to that kind of injury because you're doing these same motions over and over again. And as you get better, you're going to have that repetition, and which will lead to injury. So really keep that in mind. One of the things that'll help greatly is try to position yourself in a very comfortable position at the wheel. I like to sit in sort of what I would refer to as sort of a relaxed sitting position. So I'm not standing, but I'm up. I have my back is straight, and my hips are basically level with the wheel head. Okay, and you'll notice that I'm basically straddling the wheel right here. So I'm getting up as close as I can to the wheel. My stool is basically at wheel height, and I'm going to be sitting with my legs straddling the wheel. Now I find this a really easy way to position myself for centering or wheel throwing, because it allows me to not have to rely on my arm strength or my core strength. What it does is it allows me to use the weight of my body as a fulcrum, and being able to use that to my advantage to be able to push and pull and use some of the core areas of my body rather than just kind of relying on my arms where my elbows can sort of float freely in the air. So let's get started. I have my clay that I've wedged. I got 3 balls here. They're all different sizes. It doesn't matter what size of clay that you're working with. The wedging, when you're wedging, you're basically dealing with the same principles. So whether you're using, you're wedging 50 pounds of clay or like a small, 1 pound ball of clay, you're still going to be using the same principles to center it on the wheel. So the first thing I want to do after wedging is I want to pat my ball of clay into as round and smooth a ball as possible. Okay, so it's just like a nice smooth ball. Now I'm going to take it and I'm going to slam it down onto the wheel head as close as I can to the center. So if you think of this as a big target, I'm going to try to get it right in the middle. Okay, so right there, it's pretty close to center. So you'll notice this particular wheel, I'm lucky enough to have a wheel like this where I think it was designed for someone in a wheelchair, but one of the bonuses of it is it's adjustable with this crank, so I could bring it up and down. And one of the things I like most about it is that the pedal, which it's great to have a foot pedal, but I find when you're just learning, to have your foot on the pedal is going to be just another thing to worry about, another thing to think about as you're trying to center. So having this on the side, I could basically set my speed, let go, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm not going to be, sitting on the gas pedal and then focusing on here and it going faster and faster and sort of losing my focus. So you can see I have it going at a pretty decent speed. Now centering, you always want it to go at, you don't have to go full speed, but you want enough speed so that the revolutions of the wheel will help you get it centered. Okay, so this is about right. This is about a little bit over halfway, right? So it's got a little bit of a speed, and basically the only tools I'm going to be using are my hands at this point and my sponge. So this sponge here is just your basic sponge that you get from like a tool kit, or you can use the elephant ear sponge, which is great. I prefer to use one of these. And I'm going to get the clay nice and lubricated at this point. So you can see it sort of moving around. Now I have my sponge wet. I'm going to just let some of that water drip onto the ball of clay. And now I'm going to position my hand. So you'll notice right now that my elbow is wedged into my hip. Okay, so this is my hip bone right here. This is my elbow, and then I have this bone here coming right up, and I'm going to be using this part of my hand. So if I'm leaning into it this way, you can see how that's moving my arm in a very stable way. If I were to just come at it like this, that clay is going to be moving my arm around, and I'm going to have a lot harder time, getting this to center. So I'm using my core as sort of an anchor, and then my body is this arm here is a sort of a fulcrum that's going to be putting pressure on that clay. So the pressure is going to be from this part of my hand, and then I'm going to be using my thumb. So this inner part here, I'm going to be using in order to shape that. So I'll be able to sort of pressure this way and pressure this way to get that nice, easy ball shape. Okay? Now with my right hand, I'm going to be doing the opposite. So this hand is pushing, my right hand is pulling. So you'll notice right now, before I get started, my wheel is going in a counterclockwise direction. Now some wheels will have sort of a reverse setting where if you're left-handed, or if you, I know that other places like in Korea, they have the wheels going the other way and everybody learns to throw that way. Here in North America, typically wheels go in a counterclockwise direction, and so that's the way I'm going to be teaching it. If you're left-handed and you're having trouble with this, throwing is kind of an ambidextrous skill, so I don't think it really matters, you know. You're using one hand just as much as you are the other, so either way you're going to be using both hands. So once again, I'm going to be taking my left hand against my hip, pushing on that clay, my right hand pulling, and up. So you can see it's still wobbling around. So one thing I want to do is now I'm pushing down, I'm holding the clay steady from flattening out with this hand, same spot against my hip. I'm pushing it down. I'm holding it. Now this is key what I'm about to tell you here. I never want to just like be pushing with pressure and then release it. See how that happened? All of a sudden the clay is now moving around and around. So before I release, you always want to release pressure, and once let it go around in your hand a few times, and then release your hand. Okay? So release pressure, release your hand. And I can't stress how important that is, and that goes throughout the whole throwing process. Whether you're making a big vase or a big cylindrical form, or you're just centering, you always want to release pressure, let it go around a few times, and then release your hands. And you're going to find that that's going to be making life a whole lot easier. Because whenever you just all of a sudden release pressure, you're going to find that you're going to throw off the center, and then you're going to be stuck trying to bring it back to center, or in some cases it might be too late. Okay, so once again, I'm going to be elbow in to my hip. I'm using this part of my hand. This part of my hand is along the bottom, so I'm kind of cupping that shape here. This hand here, I'm pushing down. So I'm pushing down with this part of my hand. So I'm using this edge with my left hand, this edge with my top hand, and that allows me to get that shape that I'm looking for, which is just a nice, easy ball shape. Okay? I just want to squeeze it up. Okay? Once you get to the top, release pressure, release your hands. Okay, so now I have this nice conical shape. Now I'm going to push it down using this part of my hand, this hand still not allowing it to flatten out. I want to keep that ball shape. Pushing it back down. Into that lump of clay. Okay? Releasing pressure. Let it go around a few times, and then gradually release my hands. So this is basically what I want to see to get started making a cylinder. So that's centering. Next phase, making a cylinder.